the balcony across the alley. The first time I saw her, she was barefoot on the balcony across the alley, standing in January air like the cold was a rumor. She tilted her face to the pale sun and smoked as if she'd been promised immunity. The building between us was a narrow street's width, 6 floors of brick that loved echoes. I opened my kitchen window to let the boiling pot breathe and the smell of garlic escape. Her eyes flicked toward me, then away. It felt like the first page of a book you already know will cost you sleep. I live above a print shop and below a piano teacher who practices scales at improbable hours. My work is the kind that fits in a laptop and steals hours from the corners of days. I audit political campaigns for digital leaks and reputational soft spots. I tell clients where they're porous. It makes you suspicious in ways you can't always turn off. I had moved into this apartment precisely because it didn't look like a story. Yellowed ceiling, a table rescued from a cafe that closed, a coat rack that leaned like it had opinions. I wanted a life that didn't advertise itself. Across the alley, the woman did not introduce herself right away. She paced the balcony in the evening with a glass of something amber and a phone she rarely looked at. I watched without watching, the way city people do, expert at pretending nothing is happening while memorizing every detail just in case. On the fourth evening, when the wind cut sharper, she wrapped herself in a navy coat that fell to her ankles and turned her face toward my window. "Do you ever sleep?" she called, her voice low, the kind that convinces you the joke has subtext. "I wait for the piano to hit C major," I said. "Then I'm allowed." She smiled. "Lucky ritual. Does yours have a name?" "Running," she said. "From and toward, take your pick." The next morning, a note appeared on my doormat, folded in half like a secret that wanted posture. Stairwell cameras were out. Our building was old enough to trust neighbors and young enough to regret it. The note smelled faintly of smoke and citrus. I knew it was hers before I read it. "If you're going to audit the world, you should know the world audits back. Coffee at noon. E." The E was a glyph, not a letter. I put the note on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a fish and told myself not to answer. At 12:03, we were in the cafe 2 blocks down, a small place with a chalkboard menu, and a man behind the counter who was in love with every bean. She wore the navy coat and a black sweater with a high collar. The first thing I noticed up close was the scar along her left wrist, a pale crescent like a healed moon. The second was the way she drenched her attention on you when you spoke, as if focus were a transferable blessing. "Elena," she said, offering her hand, "I should tell you I'm married. Consider it a disclosure." "Mark," I said, "I should tell you I notice things I don't intend to. Occupational hazard." "Perfect," she said. "Between the two of us, no accident will go undocumented." We didn't confess anything important that first meeting. We were playful with the edges. She asked what my clients feared most. I said screenshots. She asked what I feared. I said misreading a room. She laughed without malice. When she talked about her work, branding, she said, the elegant word for selling skins to people who are tired of their own. She did it with the urgency of someone who knows a costume can become a person if you breathe hard enough into it. She ordered a second espresso and didn't flinch when it arrived hot. When she stood to leave, she touched the scar like a tiny, private ritual. "You look like a man who doesn't call until after midnight," she said. "If you do, don't apologize." She didn't wait for me to reply. She called me first at 12:11 the same night, her voice half smile, half demand. "I left my balcony doors open," she said. "Tell me what the city sounds like from your side." Like a piano practicing contrition upstairs, I thought, and a print shop swallowing secrets downstairs. Like the trucks that think they're quiet after 10. like a woman who has read ahead and knows the next chapter anyway. Wet, I said, like tires kissing a street they might have to leave. She exhaled. Good, keep that. I'm writing slogans for a skincare line. We want rain without consequence. You mean forgiveness, I said. Everyone does, she said. She became a pattern. Mornings on the balcony with bare feet and stubborn cigarettes. Afternoons of near collisions on the stairs that left us both surprised and composed. Evenings of calls that started with a question about sound and ended with me telling her about the worst dinner I ever cooked, and her telling me about the first lie she remembers telling her mother at 7, that she'd been chosen for a class solo. She sang in the kitchen to prove she could have been. On a Tuesday the color of library paste, she said, let's meet somewhere ugly so we can be pretty. She chose a bar under the rail bridge where the air smelled like steel. She wore her hair up in a small silver hoop through one ear. The ring on her left hand was a thin band, unbragging. She curled her fingers around her glass and said, I should say his name out loud so it's not magic. Daniel. Does saying it make anything safer? I asked. Nothing is safe, she said, but honesty at least disables booby traps. Does Daniel know you collect neighbors? Her mouth turned at the corner. He knows I collect rooms where I can hear myself think. He provides many rooms. He prefers his echo. I pictured him as tall and tidy, a man with an expensive watch that made him late to nothing. I pictured him looking at his reflection with the fondness of a craftsman for good work. I wanted to dislike him completely. The world refuses neatness. The first time we touched, it was almost accidental. She was laughing about a client who thought the internet could be domesticated and put his hand in its mouth, and I reached across the table to stop her napkin from falling. Our fingers met and paused, as if they had rehearsed a choreography alone and were relieved to practice with a partner. The pause was the important part. It contained 1,000 pages. We're going to ruin something, she said softly, not pulling away. I don't want to ruin you, I said. I want to complicate you. You can't want that, she said, and then shook her head. No, you can want it. Wanting isn't a verdict. We took a long walk after, down streets that didn't belong to either of us. When we stopped beneath the theater marquee that had lost 3 bulbs, she kissed me without ceremony, like punctuation in the middle of a sentence, not the end of one. Her mouth was warm and tasted of citrus, and a secret you decide to share anyway. We leaned into the scaffolding to keep our balance, and the city pressed in close like a friend who approves. We didn't go to my place that night or hers. Restraint can be erotic if you focus. She texted me an hour after we parted, I'd like to see the room where you work. I stared at the screen until the letters pulsed. Then I wrote back, tomorrow. Bring the kind of truth that can fit in a pocket. The room where I work is also my living room, my kitchen, my life. It smelled like coffee and printer ink and the rosemary I burned when ideas need shepherding. She walked in slowly, as if she were letting the space notice her in return. She touched the whale magnet, my one joke decoration, and smiled. You kept something silly, she said. Nobody dangerous keeps something silly. I keep many silly things, I said. Some of them are inside me. We didn't undress like thieves. We undressed like people who had been talking for weeks and were tired of their mouths doing all the work. The eroticism, if you want a definition, was in the specific. The soft hiss of her sweater when I pulled it over her hair, the tiny intake of breath when my palm found the warm skin between her shoulder blades, the way her knee brushed the side of my thigh and made my name a different language. We moved carefully at first, then less carefully, the way you cross a river that looks shallow and then decides you're trustworthy. We stopped twice to laugh, once because she asked to see my face when she said my name. We made something that wasn't innocence but felt like a kind of clean. After, she lay with her forehead on my shoulder and watched the ceiling as if it had subtitles. I thought it would feel like a crime, she said. It feels like a decision. Decisions have victims, I said, still believing in tidy truths. Then let's be kind when we can, she said. Clean as we can, honest as we can. We weren't always. Honesty is a room with drafts. You keep closing windows and the air insists on coming in. She didn't tell Daniel right away. I didn't tell my brother, who believes in acceptable losses and unacceptable risks and would have lectured me with love. We built a small country in the gaps between our real lives and promised, like idealists, to pay taxes in clarity. The intrigue arrived like a courier at noon. A client, an opposition research firm with a moral compass that spun depending on retainer, sent me a file I shouldn't have opened and then of course did. Inside were internal messages from a mayoral candidate's team, and in two separate threads a name, Daniel R. Feld. I recognized it before the part of my brain assigned to denial could go to work. Fundraising strategist, event architect, the man who chose slogans like he chose ties. The man who was married to the woman, asleep on my couch with my sweatshirt on, hair a dark river over her cheek. I closed the laptop. I opened it again. I clicked search like a coward touching a bruise. In one message, a junior staffer joked about Feld's moral math, the way he weighed rumor versus risk. In another, there was a photo attached, a gala shot with Daniel in a tux, arm around Alina, captioned in internal shorthand that made me itch. He looked almost exactly like I'd built him. Careful, tall, the sort of man who looks at a room and forgives it for not being him. Alina woke while I was still starring. She took in my face in one glance and sat up. What did you find? Work, I said automatically, then remembered not to lie to the person you want to keep. Daniel, work and Daniel. She didn't flinch. Of course. He lives inside everyone's files like a polite ghost. Does he know about me? I asked. She considered. He knows there is a door I keep walking through, she said. He doesn't know the address. He thinks he can convince the contractor to move the hinges. Does he hurt you? The question arrived hard, a reflex I didn't interrogate. No, she said quickly. Not like that, not at all. He's kind in a way that doesn't bend. I break easier than he does. I sent the file back with a bland note. Conflicts, cannot engage. Then I closed the laptop and watched the boundaries inside me reorganize themselves. We can't be the surprise at his fundraiser, I said. We don't have to be a scene anywhere, she said, a line of stubborn in her voice I loved immediately. We can be a story. But stories intersect. 2 days later, I was at an event in a museum atrium under a whale skeleton that made even wealthy people feel small. I was there to keep a donor from tweeting his heart out after 3 drinks. Alina walked in on Daniel's arm, wearing a dress that was a shade between slate and storm. The room collected itself around them. Daniel saw me first, or maybe he'd already known to look. His gaze was unflinching and almost kind. He didn't perform possession, he performed certainty. He approached without hurry. If I'd been writing it, I would have given him a glass to slam down. The real thing was more adult. Mark, he said, offering his hand. I've read your work. I've read your events, I said. He smiled without teeth. You're good at finding leaks. I'm good at making a roof that looks expensive enough to distract from them. Alina stood exactly an elbow's distance away. Her face was composed in a way that told me composition cost energy. She didn't speak. Not yet. Walk with me, Daniel said, as if we were colleagues and the air required stretching. We moved to the edge of the room where the noise made privacy. He did not threaten me. He surprised me, which is a more destabilizing kind of violence. "I know about you," he said. "I don't know your middle name, and I don't know if you prefer your coffee with milk, but I know your shape. I know the sound she makes when she says your name. She used to make a similar sound for certain songs. Not for me, for the song." I had nothing eloquent to say. "Do you want me to leave the city," I asked, "or the planet?" "I want you to keep her safe," he said quietly. "Not from me, from the part of herself that thinks she has to become small to be allowed to be new." He let that hang in the air like a chandelier with a weak chain. "We're done," he added, nodding toward Elena without looking at her. "We are going to walk out tonight with a choreography that keeps my donors from breaking their glass hearts, but we're done. I prefer honest endings to dishonest middles." He returned to the heart of the party before I could decide whether to respect him or resent him. Elena drifted to me later in the corridor by a painting of a woman who looked exhausted from being looked at. "I didn't ask him to say any of that," she said. "I didn't ask him to be better than my worst version of him," I said. We laughed, which felt like disloyalty and relief at once. Then she pressed her forehead to mine and whispered, "I'm so tired of rooms where everything meaningful is whispered." "Then let's choose our room," I said. We did not run away. We did not post anything. We did ordinary brave things. She moved to a sublet with windows that faced a park. I took on clients no one would ever write a think piece about. We kept seeing each other not as an affair but as a life we kept choosing out loud. When we made love, it was no longer a rebellion. It was a resuscitation. The erotics changed shape. Less emergency, more precision. The detail I remember most from that first week after she left was her standing at my sink, eating a pear over the basin, juice on her wrist, laughing because the piano upstairs tried to accompany her chewing. Months later, on a night when the city smelled like warm metal, she took me back to her old building, our building. We stood in the alley where it had started. Her balcony door was closed. The new tenants had hung wind chimes that made ridiculous sounds. She pulled something from her pocket and put it in my hand. A thin ring, not hers, the key to the old apartment. Cold metal, useless now. "Keep it," she said, "as proof the door opens from both sides." We kissed there, not like punctuation but like a new paragraph. Nothing around us changed. Trash trucks, cats, a taxi refusing to squeeze down our narrow street. But inside me, something unclenched. Betrayal had become a prologue, intrigue a map we no longer needed because we were on the ground walking it. Back in my kitchen, she perched on the counter and swung her feet. "Are we good people?" she asked. "Good is a dull instrument," I said. Be careful, let's be vivid, let's be answerable." She nodded, then tugged me closer by my shirt. "I want to relearn you," she said, voice low, slowly. We were not pure, we were precise. We kept little rituals. I played one song to the end before we started anything important. She traced the crescent scar on her wrist when she needed to remember that healing is not the same as forgetting. At 2:17 a.m., sometimes the city was loud, sometimes it was obedient. Her hand found my chest like it had done it in other lives. The piano upstairs fell finally, gloriously, into C major. And across the alley, a balcony uncomplicated by us moved in the wind like a promise we'd already kept.